know where to start because there's so much going on. But, you know, under the guise of saving the planet and the environment, unelected regional boards, bodies, and commissions are making decisions about how and where we are going to live, or the future residents of Danville and the Bay Area are going to live. And this is a plan that's a 25-year plan. This is the first ever regional plan coming out of an unelected, unaccountable body called ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Governments, and MTC, the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. These are unelected boards, bodies, and commissions that elected officials in our Bay Area belong to, but this is not part of our government. This regional plan has never been done. And I'm here to tell you this regional plan is not a grassroots effort. It's not a state-level, state-run effort. It's something that has been morphed, brought about by these regional bodies and other entities as well, NGOs and stakeholder groups. And it's being forced upon our city and town, and I'm here to tell you all about it. So it comes under the guise of saving the planet. So to save the planet, we need to get out of our single-family homes, we need to get out of our cars, we need to live in high-density housing next to mass transit. I mean, that's the basic model of sustainable development. Now, we use the term sustainability, sustainable Danville, or sustainable yogurt, sustainable fish, right? We don't really know what that means. We think we know what it means, but I'm here to tell you it's not all rosy pictures. Okay? It's not about saving the planet. This is the definition that came out of the Brundtland Commission in 1987. This is the definition they want you to believe sustainable development is about. Development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Sounds good. Sounds reasonable. Why wouldn't you want that? You want clean air. You want clean energy. You want a nice future for your children. But I'm here to tell you that when you start reading the actual legislation that's coming down out of Sacramento and is called Sustainable Community Strategy, it's anything but this rosy picture. It's all about transforming our 9 Bay Area counties into high-density stack and pack housing, all for redistribution of wealth and social equity and social justice. And we'll talk about that. Now, this plan, sustainable development, was adopted in 1992 through the Earth Summit. The Rio de Janeiro Earth Summit was held in 1992, and President Herbert Walker Bush Sr. signed on to this. He pledged to adopt this and incorporate sustainable development into the agenda for the 21st century. Now, this is a non-binding treaty. It wasn't ratified by Congress, and I understand it's non-binding, but it's being implemented at all levels of our government, and it's being done through executive orders, regulations, and all kinds of measures that are being taken. And the very next year, in 1993, this President Clinton adopted or created an executive order that created the President's Council on Sustainable Development. And that the job of the President's Council on Sustainable Development was to make sure that what the president before him pledged to was then injected into all of our policies at every level of government. Now, when you see the 3 interlocking circles, the 3 E's, those 3 E's are United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development. Okay? You are looking at the logo, per se. What you see is economy, equity, and environment. When you see an economy, what this means is not a robust economy for all of us. This means to replace our free market principles with private-public partnerships. I'm talking about big government with big corporations with big labor. That's what this public-private partnerships are forming in order to control development. Now, equity. Equity is also, it's not equal opportunity. This is not equal justice, and justice isn't blind. It's now social justice and environmental justice. So everything is all about equitable outcomes in terms of redistribution. And of course, the environment is being used to change our behavior. I mean, this is really what it is, a transformational behavior from whatever we're doing now to the principles that they want us to follow, which are these 3 E's in sustainable development. So our federal, state, and local government has been usurped, okay? It's been changed. And what I've found is we've got this type of shadow government that's being built around us. And we're wondering why we don't have accountability in our government anymore. It's because it's broken. We've got nothing but NGOs and stakeholder groups like the Sierra Club and Transform and Greenbelt Alliance and the Bicycle Coalition or whoever else, all these different NGOs, and I'm not saying bad, good, or whatever, but they're all lobbying and controlling what's happening. And we, the taxpayers in our own communities, aren't getting a say. We're not stakeholders at the table. We're the meal. So what's happening is, at the federal level, I'm talking about international policies are being injected at the federal, state, and local levels through NGOs like the International Council for Local and Environmental Initiatives. ICLEI is a very powerful worldwide NGO, and it makes international climate change policy and land use policy that's being injected into our local general plans. Can you believe that? This is happening everywhere. Now, we also have super councils and unelected boards and bodies like the California Air Resource Board. I don't know if you know, but we have Cap and Trade just went live. Okay? We've got a California Air Resource Board now that is that we can't even audit. We're not allowed to, the legislators are not allowed to audit this board. They are making the decisions and handing them down. And these super councils, boards, and commissions are now also controlling what's happening. Now, at the regional level, well, there is no such thing as regional government, first of all. No such thing as regional government. So we have these regional bodies, boards and commissions, the Bay Area Air Quality Management District, we have the ABAG, Association of Bay Area Governments, we've got the Metropolitan Transportation Commission, a bunch of alphabet soups of boards and commissions with unaccountability to you, the taxpayers, who are now being given billions of taxpayer money. And they are holding that over the cities and counties and saying, if you want this money, if you want your transportation dollars or whatever it is to fund your project, your roads, repair, etc., then you're going to build what we want you to. Now, last year we were told that redevelopment went away. I don't know if you guys remember that, but redevelopment was voted out. I mean, a lot of people cheered that because, you know, there were a lot of corruption that was going on with the local redevelopment. And I'm not saying they were doing a great job, but they were our bad guys. They were local, right? We could do something about it. Well, redevelopment money didn't go away. What happened is it got ripped away at the local level and it got reconstituted at a higher level. The money and power is being constituted at a higher and higher level in our system now. And so that what's happening is our local cities and counties are having to either do what they're being told to do, or they're not getting their share of return to source funds, their road money, etc. And those are your tax dollars. So they're being basically held hostage. And so a lot of this stuff is being forced on the local cities and towns. So it's very difficult for them to say no. Now, as I said, ICLEI, the International Council for Local and Environmental Initiatives, sends out a local Agenda 21 planning guide about sustainable development. This is the land use policy guide that our local governments are using right now. An international land use policy is being implemented in Danville, controlling how and where we're going to live in the future. This is not some homegrown land policy that Arnerich thought up. He's not that smart, although he thinks so. But anyway, so listen, we've got problems in California. Okay, we've got problems here because we have legislation that is also forcing us to build high-density, compact, urban-style stack and pack everywhere. Have you noticed that? Have you driven around and wondered why everywhere you look there's high-density housing going in? And that's all it is. Because these plans don't allow for any single-family residential neighborhoods to be built. None. There's not going to be any new development. I'm not saying someone can't build on their own property, onesie, twosie kinds of things. But in the future, when this regional plan gets adopted at the regional level, it's going to be the blueprint that's overlaid onto all of the local general plans for all of the 101 cities in the 9 Bay Area counties. And if the local cities want their source fund, their funds, their transportation funds, they will have to adopt this. And so we're being pushed in this direction whether we like it or not. Now, the three main bills that are controlling all of this, number one, AB 32 was passed in 2006, and SB 375 was in 2008, and AB 2785 was in 2010. All of these were under Schwarzenegger's watch, by the way. So, in AB 32, which is our Global Warming Act, and calls for cap and trade, the idea is, you know, we want to save the planet, right, from global warming. Whether you believe in that or not, I don't care. The whole point is that's the catalyst for all this other, that's the reason we're being given for doing all of this other stuff. We need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and get out of our cars and reduce VMTs, vehicle miles traveled. And to do that, we need to create sustainable communities. And what are sustainable communities? High density, stack and pack housing next to mass transit. Because you're not going to need your car anymore, according to these people. You are going to be taking the bus to work. You're going to be walking. You're going to be biking. You're going to go to the grocery store on your bike now. That's really the future of where we're going to be. Now, that was in 2008. That creates the high-density housing. Now, if you're not in the urban areas, which we are all being transformed into, then AB 2785 says we're going to create open space and wildland corridors throughout California. Now, these are all bills. You can look them up. I've read all of them. I've investigated them. I've gone I've testified in hearings. This is what is driving all of this. AB 32, our Global Warming Act. The California Air Resource Board is the board that is supposed to be responsible for measuring our greenhouse gases, monitoring that, capping it, and creating the carbon credit trading scheme to punish the polluting big polluters. The problem is that 90% of the carbon credits are going to be given away to friends and whatever. Crony capitalism is happening here, so a lot of it is we're not going to be stopping anything. This is simply a way to tax Californians out of existence. I mean, if you've got a business, you are going to be, if you rely on trucking, my husband's business is suffering because we can't get truckers to come into California anymore because it costs $50,000 to upgrade a truck to haul freight. And it's doubled the amount of it costs to haul freight across the country now. And this is not about saving the planet. A lot of this drives the small businesses out of business, and the larger businesses will get the carbon credits for free. There's a lot of that going on. If the developments are something that they want to happen, they will get free credits. There's a lot of waivers. There's a lot of California Environmental Quality Act stuff that they call streamlining or whatever, which basically means as long as you're doing what the development or whatever we want you to do, we're going to give you waivers. We're going to not require you to meet a lot of the requirements that we're going to put upon the average business, developer, person building a home, adding an addition to your house. I mean, for God's sakes, it's almost impossible to add an addition to your house these days. So that's what's happening. Now in the AB 32, what it says is that we need to, in California, reduce our greenhouse gas emissions to 1990 levels by the year 2020. Now, according to AP Reuters and a study that was published, we're already there on a nationwide level, but these regional bodies don't want to hear about that, and they're pushing forward anyway. We have to reduce the amount of VMTs, vehicle miles traveled, according to them, and still go through with all of these things. Now, what were our greenhouse gas emissions in 1990? I called the California Air Resource Board, and they're using a number, 127 million metric tons. They weren't even measuring GHGs in 1990. This is a flat-out guesstimate, okay? They're basing it on mostly vehicle gas consumption, but you know, it's basically a wild guess. And that's what but that's the target number they're using. Now in 2005, Arnold Schwarzenegger pledged with an executive order for California that in the year 2050 we will have a reduction in GHGs to 80% below 1990 levels. 80% below. That's a 60-year gap with millions more people in California, yet we're going to go back to a number that we haven't been at, if you calculate, probably since the 1930s. I mean, this is serious behavioral change. This is a socially re-engineering of California that's going to be happening over the next, 20, 30 years for sure and more. And nobody seems to really know what that is going to mean and what that's going to look like, but it's very frightening. And with the new technology with our cars and natural gas and all of these things, we have so many other ways that we can deal with this. Now, we talked about open space and the wildlands a little bit, but the open space, you know, we're being told that we need to stop building horizontally, we need to build vertically. We're still building. I mean, this is the thing. It's not stopping the development. It's just that we've been brainwashed and conditioned into thinking that horizontal, single-family home style building is bad and everything needs to be infill, compact, straight up and down. So we're actually pushing, a lot of us, the same agenda. We're going in the same direction, not really realizing it. We want to save our open space. Of course we do. In California, 76% of the land is open space. I don't know if you know that or not. In Nevada, 85% is open space. In Danville alone, it's 40% open space. Now, if somebody owns land that is outside of an urban growth boundary, they've also lost their property value because they can't develop a lot of that. You know, there's a lot of real restrictions that are going on. But keep in mind, we want to preserve open space. We want to keep our government land pristine, etc., and enjoy it. But a lot of this is being used for land mitigation banks. It's part of the carbon credit trading scheme. The conservation easements that are going in, the requirements that large sections of open space be available when developers develop, a lot of this land is being put into what's called a land mitigation bank. And you can Google this. This is part of the carbon credit trading scheme. This is not about providing wildlife corridors and saving habitat. This is about control and money. These land mitigation banks then use those carbon credits in a giant carbon credit trading scheme. So when a polluter wants to pollute and they don't want to have to upgrade their facilities or whatever, they pay an open space bank for carbon credit. It's really just like that. All right, sustainable communities. This bill links land use to transportation. So in 2008, this bill was passed and it called for high-density housing next to mass transit. It called on our regional unelected boards and bodies, COGS, the Council of Governments, ABAG, the Association of Bay Area Governments, and the Metropolitan Transportation Commission to create a regional transportation plan and now a land use plan. How we're going to live, where we're going to build, based on population numbers that are way outside of unrealistic. Their population and growth numbers are off the charts. So they take these wildly overstated population and growth numbers and then they decide who's going to get what, how much growth you're going to be expected to absorb into your community, and we'll talk about that. And that's how they base their transportation dollars as well. They want more inflated numbers because they're a transit authority. They want to spend money on trains and buses. So these unelected boards and bodies are actually doing a lot of this and planning it. And they will tell you, you know, we don't have anything to do with it. Don't blame us. We're just following a state mandate. This is a bill that came from the state. You need to go talk to DeSaulnier or Buchanan or your state legislators. That's who you need to go beat on. And you'll find out that that's not true, that these people were actually behind pushing this legislation. And, or they'll tell you, turn around and say, the local cities want this. Arnerich and Doyle and Stepper and all these people, they're coming to us. And they're asking us, please, make our whole town a priority development area. And so we oblige. Not true. Well, maybe they are because they want money. I mean, it's all ultimately down to money. So the One Bay Area Plan is a plan that is basically our sustainable communities regional strategy. Okay, so the sustainable community strategy for the Bay Area is called the One Bay Area Plan or Plan Bay Area. And the Plan Bay Area is getting 277, well, MTC and ABAG are getting $277 billion. Now, every time I go to a meeting, the numbers go up. I mean, doing this for a couple of years, and it started at like, I don't know, 220, and now the latest number is like 277 billion. So the federal grant money is being handed to them, and they are then going to dole out that money to all the 101 cities and counties in the Bay Area based on whether they meet the requirements of a sustainable community. Now, sustainable communities are considered high-density, compact, stack and pack housing next to mass transit. You are supposed to be within a half mile of a transit hub or a half mile of a transit corridor, which Danville is neither. I clocked it from Danville to Walnut Creek BART, and it was about 7 miles. So the idea that we are going to somehow get out of our cars and save greenhouse gases and the planet to boot by creating high-density housing in our downtown area is ridiculous. We are simply going to exacerbate the problem. This is why Danville is a perfect place to fight this, because it's the poster child for why all of their arguments don't hold water and don't make sense. It has nothing to do with the planet. This is all about control and money. The developers want to develop. They're being given incentives to create higher densities, lower incomes, and build this type of housing. If you're a developer, I have nothing against development. I'm just saying that if you are given incentives and being led down the path of, we'll give you waivers, we'll give you incentives, we'll give you land, we'll help you do this and all of these other things, or you can try to build single-family residential homes and we'll beat you with EPA regulations and EIRs, and we'll fine you and we'll give you huge development fees and we'll make your life so miserable that you wish you never built that community. What would you like to do? And that's what's happening. I know a lot of developers who don't want to develop this type of thing, but they're saying this is what we're being told we have to do. So, you know, this is a vicious cycle. We're funding this whole... the interesting thing is we're locked in this vicious cycle. We've got big government handing out huge amounts of money, saying if you want this money, you'll do this. And we've got people who need jobs and need and want to work. And so, you know, they're going down that path. And then, of course, if you use this government money, then you have to use labor, okay? Project labor agreements, which is union labor. So then the labor union is involved and on board. And it becomes a vicious cycle. And you, the taxpayer, are subsidizing all of it. And you're the only one that is not a stakeholder and actually getting a decision about what's going on. So this is their vision. This is the One Bay Area vision. The original steering committee. You guys recognize him? Van Jones. Nice communist. This is what they want for us, okay? It sounds really pretty and nice. These are the original NGOs and stakeholders that formed the Bay Area Alliance for Sustainability. PG&E, the Sierra Club, Silicon Valley Leadership Group, Urban Habitat, Greenbelt Alliance, Association of Bay Area Governments, the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights, etc. So, that's the video that they use to try to recruit people and show them how beautiful things can be with a nice, beat and some nice pictures. But the truth is, like I said, they are transforming our cities and towns right from under us. And it's not coming from the state. It's not coming from, press the down button. Okay, Pam. Here. Oh, page down? No? Shoot. Ah. Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, so the truth is that the compact for there was a compact. In 1996, the President's Council, we talked about that, okay? 1993, Clinton created the President's Council. In 1996, that council, couple of council members, Sierra Club and PG&E, came and presented to the ABAG General Assembly the idea of regional governance, of a regional sustainable development project being done, initiative being done. They presented it back in 1996. They adopted the 3 E's. Now this is one of their documents. This is the Compact for a Sustainable Bay Area off of ABAG's site. I'm not making this up. I'm simply quoting off of their site and their document. They adopted the 3 E's of sustainable development, and the Bay Area Alliance adopted the definition of sustainable development endorsed by the United Nations World Commission on Environment and Development. Go on. Okay, they were the pilot program. They were chosen as one of 4 pilot programs across the nation. The Bay Area was chosen. And in 1999, they had the guy who wrote the Danville plan, the Danville EIR, the SAP, Sustainable Action Plan, and part of our 2030 plan. He's the guy that wrote the regional blueprint for One Bay Area. So that guy Barry Miller, who was at the meeting last week, or a couple days ago, or whatever, I can't remember, his company is now getting residual income, making sure that we're all implementing this all over the Bay Area. Close to $400,000 they're getting paid by Danville to do this, by the way. So, and just so you know, the Bay Area Alliance also operates within an international context. The Earth Charter Initiative is an outgrowth of the 1992 Earth Summit. So they're following the 16 principles of the Earth Charter. This is out of their document in this regional body. So the point is that when they say, it's not us, it's our state level legislatures, I'm going to remind you, and I reminded them, that the SB 375, AB 32, AB 32 was in 2006. SB 375 was passed in 2010, or 2008, and AB 2785 was 2010. These people were at this have been at this for almost 20 years. Planning this, they had all kinds of secret meetings, workshops with a couple of dozen NGOs throughout the Bay Area, all planning this and then pushing for the legislation, which has been handed down now through from Steinberg and whoever else passed these initiatives, so that they can now say, gee, we're just following a mandate. This is how it happened, okay? These regional bodies, through international influences, then came up with this, created this compact, formed an alliance, pushed this agenda, and got the legislation so that now they can implement this grand plan in the Bay Area. And this isn't just happening in the Bay Area, it's happening all over the country. But we were the pilot program, so we are the only state that actually has legislation pretty much forcing us into this direction unless we do something about it. So, like I said, Danville, one of the NGOs that was responsible, was part of the Bay Area Alliance, wrote the blueprint. And his name is David Early with DCE Planning Center. And again, he's paid over $350,000, close to $400,000 to work on the Danville 2030 plan, the AIR, and the STAP. And that's, to me, a huge red flag. So, and follow the money, right? The person that's pushing the plan is the person that wrote the plan. Interesting. So what does it mean? Okay, now that we've given you a kind of an overview, big picture where it came from, here's what it means to Danville, okay? In order to get our transportation funds and get the money from MTC and ABAG, our local cities are having to adopt a priority development area, designate an area of the town where we can focus our growth, where we can focus growth over the next 20 years. We've got a 20-year plan now, 2030, and going onward. This is a target. This basically is the target area for all new development in Danville. You want to know where new development's going to be? Right there. So what happens is every 8 years we're going to get a regional housing needs allocation. They call it ARENA allocation. And that's basically our fair share of low income, very low income, or whatever different levels of income housing. And we are going to have to rezone area, find areas in our priority development or within our town to rezone that can support the level of anticipated growth that is way off the charts in our small town.
They're already doing that.
They're already doing that. That's correct, but they didn't designate a PDA. This is the first time they've designated a priority development area. Up until now, we've had options on how we could deal with this low-income housing, which has been, ARENA allocations have been going on since the 80s, okay? And so, but we haven't actually had to build anything. But in the future, they're going to start forcing the actual building of projects. There's not going to be any more free passes anymore. And we need to figure out in Danville how we're going to deal with this. Do we want an unelected regional board and body telling us how and where we're going to build, or do we want to have local control? We want to have local control. We can handle we can reduce our ARENA allocations because they're way off the charts. That's one thing that we can do, challenge these. We can get out of the regional COG. We can disassociate with ABAG. This is a voluntary organization. We can remove ourselves from it. Corte Madera has gotten out of ABAG and suddenly the ARENA allocations fell dramatically. We don't take the money. We get rid of the PDA. We can zone our homes for second units to allow for individuals to have, you know, your son, daughter, whatever, your relative, or you know, whoever you want. You know, if it's zoned, it counts towards the allocation. And then you control whether you want to build it or not, as opposed to having the city do redevelopment in our entire downtown. Because I'm telling you, right now, you go to their meetings and they go, oh, everything's going to be fine, nothing's going to change. Well, really? Why did we rezone? Why are we rezoning 9.6 acres right now to high density and creating a high density designation, super high designation for Danville that's never even existed? I mean, they're creating new levels of high density for Danville. So, you know, everything is going to change. Don't believe them. This is a bunch of lies. And Calabrillo and these people know it. And what they're counting on is, look, this is going to be over. You know, it's all gradual, right? We're going to just put a target on the downtown because we want to preserve your single-family residential homes, right? That's what they'll tell you. We don't want to build on the open space. But so we have to focus our development downtown. Well, you know, it sounds good until you start looking at what does that really mean. And what it means is Danville is going to become like Dublin downtown. There have been meetings at ABAG and MTC where they've actually had NGOs talking about banning cars in PDAs. Banning cars. I mean, that's the entire town of Danville, and they want to put maybe a rail system or whatever. You're going to walk from one end to another. I don't know. But this is what's happening. So we need to get rid of the PDA designation. I think they get a couple $100,000 for the PDA designation just by doing that. The whole point of a PDA, I've gone to these meetings, is to reduce greenhouse gases. Remember, their argument is to save the planet, reduce vehicle miles traveled. We need to get people out of their cars. We need to create compact housing next to mass transit, right? So we'll get people to ride transit instead of using their cars. I don't see any transit in Danville. So all you've done now is taken a bunch of people, jammed them into a smaller area with no transit. So now you've got more traffic, more congestion, more greenhouse gases. You've done nothing except destroy this town. You know, if people want to live in high density housing, I have nothing against it. I'm a realtor. I will sell you something in Dublin, and, you know, I'd be happy to do that. The point is there are places that people can go if they want to live like that. When people move to Danville, they don't move here to live in an urban environment. They come here to get away from it. They come here so they can park their car in front of the grocery store and walk in. So they can walk their kids to school if they want to, or whatever it is. But we're not a transit village. We are a driving community. We like it that way. We like our single family homes, and we don't want to be told what to do. I'll go to the next slide. Okay, here's the RHNA allocations, just so you can wrap your head around what we're headed to. Right now, our current RHNA allocation is 583 units. Okay, that's already been certified. That's why we've got to zone 9.6 acres in our downtown, around wherever, to accommodate for this. Okay, and in the next allocation, now this is only for the 2007 to 2014. We're almost into the next RHNA allocation, which will give us another 555 units. And of those units, they're using a distribution model of 175% equity redistribution. Now what that means to Danville people is 64% of those 555 units, the first two columns, 195 and 111, will be very low and low income, expected to be very low and low income housing. Over 64% of our allocation. So this is what they mean by income redistribution. They look at cities, okay, like Orinda and Danville and Marin and wealthy communities with higher school, scores and whatever, and they give them a higher, whatever the percentage of population growth is supposed to be, it's a higher percentage in the low income category because they want to redistribute evenly. Basically, they want to even out all the communities. Okay? That's basically what this is all. They use 175 income redistribution model. That's not me, that's their model. So you can look at that. And that's what we're expecting. Now we're just talking about units. So we're talking 1,100, almost 1,200 units. And we have to rezone for this. We haven't even done that yet. We're just in this process right now. So when they talk about Calabrigo and then talk about 9.6 acres, they haven't told us about the next level, the next wave of rezoning that they're going to go through to support this. So why don't we do senior housing? Why don't we, spread it out? Why don't we have some other choices? I mean, why do we have to change our downtown? We have to think about this. We have to reduce these allocations. We have to fight this stuff. And these are just the units. You have to consider that each unit's going to have a minimum of 2 people probably in it. So now you're talking about another 2,200 cars maybe, and 2,200 people, and then what is that going to do to our fire, safety? What about our schools? If all of the new housing is in downtown Danville, what's the nearest school? San Ramon Valley High, not Monte Vista. So how does that work? None of these questions have been answered by anybody for me. None of them have told me how they're going to, there's nothing in the mandate that says how they're going to pay for schools, how they're going to pay for health, safety, fire, any of this stuff, or even how much any of this is going to cost. Go on. Here are the 14 areas. Here's the map of all the locations that are already going to be rezoned in the Danville 2030 plan. Okay? So you can see there's the Burrell property over off of Fostoria, over by Costco. Another property over there as well. And then there's a property over on El Cerro and El Pintado. That's around the corner from where I live. That is going to be a 55-unit senior housing facility. That isn't anywhere near the town and nowhere near transit, but that's what's going in. And again, a lot of these things are these are already pretty much, well, unless we can get them to reverse some of this stuff, this is done. They have to find these areas and rezone them, and this will just be an ongoing process. So we can get out of ABAG. Okay, go to the next slide. We can get out of ABAG. We can reduce our RHNA allocations. There's things that we can do. We're going to be working on that. And then the wildlands. If you're not living in the core areas, then everything else is going to be part of the wildlands. Now, This is an actual AB 2785. It's a bill, and it, as you can see, it's Caltrans, the Department of Transportation, and Department of Fish and Game, and they're creating a California wildlands corridor system. And this is the map. This is part of a 313-page document that all of our planners are supposed to be using, but nobody's telling you about it. And I have it hanging up in the wall back there, and of course I have it here, but what you're looking at to me is a giant regulatory taking map. This is our government plotting and planning to take your property. Because what you're looking at here is the California Essential Habitat Connectivity Project. The green areas are land masses that are already under the control of our government in some form or fashion, parks, recreation, whatever. The yellow and red areas are the land that is not under their control. So it's private property that needs to be taken in order to create the corridor system that they're envisioning here. Now, this is the first ever corridor map in the entire country. Okay, and what this has is a legend up there that shows you the cost in terms of least to most, and how much it's going to cost them in terms of resources in order to get that property. So through shrinking urban growth boundaries, rezoning to open space, eminent domain, or whatever methods they plan on using, conservation easements, they're going to try to get control. So when you look at why things are changing, why they're not building here, why they're building there, a lot of this is because they're using this map. The transportation authorities are, the developers are using it, they all know about this map. Greenbelt Alliance helps them build this map, and they target private property owners who are in these corridor zones. So this is a huge problem. I mean, and I've taken this map up to the Capitol and walked door to door and talked to legislators, and most of them voted for it and didn't even realize it because it was stuffed into some, it's just a one-page thing, called for a map, but unless you stand back and realize how these things fit together, they seem really benign, but we're creating some major problems. Okay, and the idea that they're going to tell you is this is also, we can have underpasses and overpasses and wildlife corridors, as if the animals know how to read and know where to go to cross. But maybe they're smarter than us. But like I said, the wildlands and the open space is not about the animals, okay? It's not about the animals and saving the planet. It's about control and money. And what's happening with these open space conservation easements and all of this stuff is a small group of people are forming these giant land trusts. And those giant land trusts are being used as a giant $1 trillion piggy bank in the carbon credit trading scheme that's already gone live. So the next time you say we need to conserve that open space and we need to create a conservation easement and all of these things, think about what is really happening. Who's benefiting by this stuff? Because a lot of it is being used for other purposes and to fund more of the sustainable development strategies and high-density housing, high-speed rail, and all this other stuff that nobody wants. So this is what's happening. I thank you for coming tonight. We are going to hold all the questions until the end because we have a couple other people that I would like you to hear from. Mike, can you come up and present the Measure J? Mike ARATA is going to talk to you about Measure J, which is another source of funding at the county level that is being threatened to be withheld if we don't go along with this plan as well. And so I just want him to take a quick moment and tell you about that. And then we'll have MARYANN tell us about Measure S. And what's that?
They're fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I really, really appreciate it. I wish I had better news for you guys, but the good news is I live in Danville. And I'm really pissed off. And I've been fighting this a long time. So this is where I want to take a stand. This is where I think we can get out of ABAG just like Corte Madera did. We had 350 people showing up at the last several planning commission meetings. And if they're not scared, they should be, because they know they're meeting tonight, the council's meeting tonight, and they know we're meeting here. And you know what they said? We need a lot more than 350 people. I said, okay. I'm hoping that we can wake up more and get 1,000 people at these meetings, because that's what it's going to take when their jobs start being threatened.
January 22nd. My name is Mike ARATA. I'm a Danville resident, low these last 21 years. And that's by virtue of being married to the wonderful Sharon ARATA, who stands in the back there. She's been a community activist in her own right for some period of time. So among the things that you have in front of you, first of all, the Contra Costa Times has done a nice job of rounding up salaries and benefits for numerous public agencies. And apropos of tonight's discussion, I pulled off their data for ABAG. That goes on for the first 2 pages of ABAG salaries and benefits. It is so egregious, so abusive, that ABAG does not, their employees do not even pay their own portion of their pensions. Taxpayers pay the employee portion of their pensions as well as the employer portion of their pensions. So that's all summarized there. If you look at the top of the table, in each case, those are the categories of compensation. The last column is the total cost to taxpayers of each of those 82 employees of ABAG. Again, an unelected regional bureaucracy supported by taxpayer funds. The summary, total and average, is at the bottom of the back of that first page. So all 82 on front and back of the first page, summary of average and total at the bottom of that second page, or the back of the first page actually. Did the same thing for the Contra Costa Transportation Authority, and they have some 20 employees. They cost us even more per employee, $156,000, or on the order of that, a little bit over that, on average for each of these 20 Contra Costa Transportation Authority members, or employees rather. Now, these groups have ostensibly governing boards of local elected officials. But what happens, just as in Danville, is that these public entities, these unelected bureaucracies, are steered by an executive director. In Danville, we have a town manager who steers the town council as his own private little fiefdom. He makes over $300,000 in total compensation annually. I may be distributing this similar list for Danville employees. It's quite instructive also. Also in the handout is an article from one of these local newspapers, the Larkspur Corte Madera patch. And we have a Danville patch, and so we hope to get some coverage there. And this is the story of Corte Madera's self-directed removal from ABAG. It can be done. It has been done. And we have been, several of the people here have stood up and advocated Danville's removal from ABAG. We'll talk a little bit more about that. The final item, because it's relevant to this discussion, is a copy of the primary ballot argument that I and others helped coordinate in 2004, just over 8 years ago. And this was an argument to oppose Measure J. Now, most of you are familiar with the fact that beginning in 1988, Measure C began charging a half-cent sales tax throughout Contra Costa County for transportation purposes. Measure C was to expire in 2009. Anticipating that date, the Contra Costa Transportation Authority began spending taxpayer money in 2004 to advocate for a renewal of Measure C. That was Measure J. They wanted to start early so that 2 things could happen. Number one, they would be assured of funds further into the future. Otherwise, they had just a 5-year horizon. They weren't sure how many dollars they'd have after that. But number two, they wanted multiple opportunities at taxpayer expense to pass a renewal of Measure C, if that was needed. So here was the primary argument that went in against Measure J in 2004. And perhaps the best place to start is the first bullet point. Because what we pointed out, and this is the back of your handout. How many have handouts? Are they pretty well distributed? So most people can look on with someone if need be? Okay, good. I distributed 200 copies of these at the town council meeting on last Tuesday, the 8th. And I'll probably reprint portions of this and have some other information for the meeting on the 22nd. But the final back of the handout is that set of arguments. Take a look at the bullet point, the first bullet point. We predicted for Measure J, because it was in the legislation or in the initiative, strings attached. 90% or some $360 million of Measure J's so-called return to source street maintenance funds required surrendering your community's authority to county bureaucrats and complex dictates or complex decrees dictating even housing policy. So we said that up front 8 years ago. Unfortunately, 3 members of Danville Town Council, still current on the Town Council, and who were members in 2004, endorsed and supported that measure, despite this problem. Those were Karen Stepper, Newell Arnerich, and Mike Doyle. They were on the council then, and they are still on the council, and we're trying to embarrass those folks with what they've imposed upon Danville as a result of endorsing that pernicious measure. So today, Measure J passed, unfortunately, with the support of other jurisdictions. Danville was just one of them. It passed with about 71% of the vote, countywide. Unfortunately, people weren't paying attention, but these town council people, who obviously were elected, and they had their own groups of people who supported them, they said, it's a good thing. You elected us, after all, so you can believe in what we have to tell you about Measure J. So now we're committed for an extra 25 years on into essentially 2030, because this measure passed in 2004. We're committed to the half-cent sales tax with strings attached. So what has happened now is that ABAG and the Contra Costa Transportation Authority have a great say-so over what are called these return to source funds. You pay the sales tax goes to the local bureaucracy, who says, well, we'll give you some of your money back as long as you toe our line. And the line is the RHNA housing allocations, the Regional Housing Needs Assessment allocations that you've heard about. So ABAG has said back to Danville, you in the current allocation period have to designate just what Heather showed you, 9.6 acres dedicated mostly to low-income and very low-income housing. And so they have 14, what they're calling opportunity sites around the city, and those are places that are now possibilities for selection in this process. I guess the total acreage so far among those 14 is something like 36 acres, of which they need to choose 9.6 at present, and of which they will choose others in that next round of allocations. And so we're, as Heather said, we're just in this for starters at this point. So what we've been doing is going to town council with large numbers of people and saying, we have a problem, folks. Number one, ABAG is an expensive, unneeded, extra layer of government between us and the people we elect. And they're an overpaid bureaucracy. We can start with that problem. We want to remove ourselves from ABAG. The town council people are saying, and Joe Calabrigo, the manager, they're saying, well, yeah, but if we remove ourselves, then we're no longer at the table. But what happened in Corte Madera was removal meant a reduction in the allocation. They're anxious, ABAG and the other authorities are anxious to win Corte Madera back. We're hoping to talk to the folks in Corte Madera. The mayor himself did a presentation in Orinda last week, and he's apparently quite powerful in his presentation, and we hope to get hold of that or get him over here. So long and short, we've got the regional authority telling us, we'll give you your money back with strings attached if you knuckle under. I spoke to the group and said ABAG, properly speaking, should stand for Associated Bureaucrats Aggrandized by Government, because that's what they are, and we've been left out of the picture. So part of the meeting tonight, or the purpose of the meeting, is kind of a rah-rah session. It's to get folks out this next meeting, the 22nd. We need to recruit numbers in such huge force that the town council gets the message, including the 3 members who are in part responsible for this problem. We want to remove ourselves from ABAG. We want a reduction in the regional housing needs assessment numbers. And it turns out that part of the problem is ABAG is doubling. Its estimate of population growth is double what the Department of Finance says is likely to occur here. So we're also going to require a reduction in the regional housing needs assessment numbers. In other words, that 9.6 acres and what's intended to occur for those. Heather said that we're not going to do questions at this point, but I'll be around till the end of the meeting. And Heather, who's next on the agenda? Thank you for your attention, folks.
As Heather said, I'm with Save Open Space-Danville. And the story I'm going to tell you started back in 2000. How many of you lived in the Danville area in 2000? Okay, so you probably remember back then, unlike now, building was really going crazy. There was lots of building going on. And people in Danville decided they wanted to have more control. Individual citizens wanted to have more control over the planning process in Danville. And certainly that is a hallmark of democracy, is local control and individual voter control over things. And so because of that, an initiative petition was started called Measure R. And Measure R was going to put a lot of projects for building in Danville to a public vote. So whether you like it or not, that's what the plan was for this initiative, and it was qualified for the ballot. So the Danville Town Council then, which included Mike Doyle and Newell Arnerich, who are still on it now, decided apparently that they didn't like Measure R, and they wanted to put their own competing measure on the ballot called Measure S. So they hired a very expensive San Francisco law firm called Schutt, Mahaley & Weinberger to draft Measure S for them. And as you can imagine, Measure S didn't give the public very much control over what was going to happen with building in Danville. Measure S was a much more limited right for the public to vote on building projects. And specifically, Measure S was supposed to preserve the public's right to decide whether land designated in the general plan, the 2010 general plan, the one we're operating under now, which had just been passed in 1999, this Measure S would give the public the right to decide whether anything designated in the general plan for open space use, and that included 3 subcategories: general open space, agricultural land, and parks and rec land. So it was land shown on a land use map that is part of the general plan that was designated for one of those 3 uses. Okay, so both measures went to the public vote, and both measures passed. But because there's a provision that if 2 competing measures are on a ballot and they're for the same basic purpose, they'd be contradictory if they both pass, the one that got more votes wins. Measure S, the one put on the council by the council to defeat the public's Measure R, won. So the council won their victory. So fast forward 8 years. There'd never been any votes under Measure S. People started kind of forgetting about Measure S. It had been passed so long before that. So here comes a project called Elworthy Ranch. Do you all know where this is? You go down San Ramon Valley Boulevard, just before you enter into San Ramon. And it's on the right. And it was a 459-acre agricultural designated parcel. So what that was supposed to mean, according to the Danville Town Council in its own rebuttal to the arguments against Measure S, it was supposed to mean the Danville residents had a deciding voice in any proposed change to areas not planned for development. That's what Newell Arnerich and Mike Doyle said back in 2000 when they were arguing on the ballot for Measure S to pass. That's what they told people. They said, if you vote, you'll have a deciding voice in this. So here you go. Elworthy Ranch, 459 acres, agricultural land. Did anyone get a vote on it? No. No one got a vote on it because Danville apparently thought, oh, we can not have a vote on this. No one's going to notice. And no one did notice, unfortunately, until it was too late. So that was 2008. Now fast forward 2010. There's a 200-acre ranch in Diablo Road Corridor. I don't know how many of you live in Diablo Road Corridor, but if you do, you will know that the traffic is one of the worst in the entire San Ramon School District. So terrible that Measure J funds that Mike was talking about, they started to pay for buses for the school kids to relieve the terrible traffic congestion. Okay, so 2010, Danville gets the buses for the Diablo Road Corridor. And then what happens right after that? Suddenly there's a housing development proposed for 70-plus homes for the Diablo Road Corridor on agricultural land. So in other words, tax money paying to relieve congestion, oh, now there's a new project being proposed. You would think that in itself would have kind of put the kibosh on it, but no, it proceeds. And Danville says, no, we don't need a Measure J or Measure S vote on this project. No, we don't, because we're not going to change the land use from agricultural to residential. We're just going to go ahead and put a residential plan unit develop on this, but we're not going to change the land use, even though this zoning is not allowed in that kind of land, but we're not going to change the land use. Why? Because if we change the land use, that would require a vote under Measure S. So we're going to put a zoning that's not even allowed on that land, but we're going to get around it by not saying we're changing the land use designation. Okay, it's very, very tricky, deceptive, and misleading. Call it whatever you want. So we were looking into the project, and Danville said, no Measure S vote required. So at first we sort of believed them. And we looked at the environmental impacts and tried going down that road. And then after a while, we started sort of looking into it a little more and discovered that there was a Measure S vote required. And we told Danville that, and we got together, raised a lot of money, and hired an attorney specializing in land use, who wrote Danville a big letter last winter and told them, yes, a Measure S vote is needed here, and explained in detail all the law on it. And Danville's reply was, oh no, look at these other sections of the general plan, and look at this and look at that, but never answering directly the point that we had made, which was you can't put residential zoning on agricultural land. And to this day, they still have not answered that. So what do they try to do next? They're saying now, in the 2030 general plan, they're putting residential zoning on ag land. They're changing it to circumvent the public's right to vote. And we're saying, no, you can't do that because that's violating Measure S. And they're saying, yes, you can. So we realized this was happening, so what we started to do in order to stop Danville from doing what it's doing, we started an initiative petition. And the initiative petition is trying to accomplish 3 goals. The first goal is we're trying to keep Measure S from expiring, because it will expire in 2020, in just a few years. And we want to tell Danville that there is no way that they are allowed to put plan unit development residential zoning on open space without a public vote. So we're trying to do that. And the third thing we're trying to do is Danville is now claiming, contrary to what they earlier said, that this agricultural land that they're trying to develop allows 1 home per 5 acres to be built, and that it's currently in that zoning. And we have pointed out to them that their own documents say that that land is currently in 1 home per 20 acre zoning, and that it requires a vote of council to increase the zoning and allowable houses on those lands. So we're saying to Danville that we think that decision is so important, given that it is open space and all the land under these designations, or much of it, is in highly developed, congested residential areas. We think that decision is so important it needs to go to the public vote as well. So those are the 3 goals of our initiative. We started gathering signatures in November, and we have gotten several thousand, but we need to get 6,000 Danville registered voter signatures in order to qualify for the ballot and be sure we have the 4,000 we actually need once it goes to the county recorder's office, and they have to register our voters, and they have to actually look at each signature and make sure it's valid. So we need to get more signatures. We need to get more people to help us get signatures. And we believe this is a basic voter right democracy issue, that the public's right to decide should not be denied when they have the legal right to do that. So I have some petitions here, one here, and I'm going to pass it around if any of you would like to sign. Print your name as registered to vote and sign it, and we need your address. So I'll just start it maybe in the second row here because I think, whoops, have you signed that?
MARYANN, I have a lot more in the back.
Okay. Would you mind watching everybody while they sign it? One of us is going to watch you sign it because we have to witness every signature to make sure this is all legal. So in any case, I'm going to circulate that initiative petition now, and if you can sign it, that will help us a lot. If any of you would like to help circulate petitions to protect your right to vote, please talk to me afterwards, and I will give you some petitions, and you can take them around. And as Heather said, we're talking about how we can work together if we need to referend the 2030 general plan if Danville approves it, because we do not, SOS Danville does not want these provisions going through that are trying to circumvent the public's right to vote. We think it's violating Measure S, and it's certainly violating the spirit of it as well, and we're not going to stand for Danville doing that. So we may have to join forces, and everyone who has a reason that they don't think the 2030 general plan is something that should be the appropriate plan for Danville, we have to join forces, and we'll have to get 4,000 signatures to be sure we have 2,700 valid ones in order to referend that plan. They'll have to be gotten in 30 days after the plan is approved by Danville. That sounds like a tall order, but if there are enough people to do it, it can easily be done. So we'll be talking about how to coordinate if that becomes necessary to do it later on. Okay, thank you very much, Heather.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much, and thank you, MARYANN. There was a candidate who ran for city council last time who majored on this fact that they didn't get a vote and they didn't have any say in the rezoning of agricultural property, only he didn't win. So what we're trying to do is build a broader coalition. I've lived in my same home in Danville for 38 years. I've never been to a planning commission meeting until last month. I'm not the guy that goes down and says, don't build that, I moved in 1974 and none of you people should be here. I don't have that attitude. Nor do I say, grab a bulldozer, build it anywhere. As long as it makes the economy run, I'm for it. Now that's my general predilection, but I don't go down there and say that either. Because the planning commissioners are appointed to do a specific job, and at the top of the Danville letterhead, you will see this hypocrisy saying they want to keep Danville the small town community that it is. And this is why we're recommending that everyone get out of their automobile and build high density, low income housing in Danville so that we can maintain this charming small town atmosphere. We've suggested to them that they change the letterhead, but they don't see the humor in that. So what I'm asking you to do is get involved. There's a clipboard going around, and I know you've all signed in on the way in. Keep that clipboard going and then check, yes, I will volunteer. Now you may be asked just to bring the refreshments to the next meeting, or to raise enough money to pay for the hall, or to do some small chore in this organization because we want to expand and become a broad-based organization. Some people want to refer building projects. Other people want to build a granny in-law in their home. Everyone ought to be able to do whatever the Planning Commission decides, because there are local planners who are tasked to keep this small town atmosphere and to allow Danville to grow responsibly. If they don't allow it to grow responsibly, it's the citizens like Mary and everyone else, their responsibility to get involved. So my job is to get you involved. You now understand what's going on, or you will if you get a hold of Heather or Mike after the meeting and have them fill in whatever you don't feel confident in knowing. And then we want you to recruit your neighbors to come to the next Planning Commission meeting and watch this circus. Watch these people after the meeting, and when I first gave my pitch, and I've only done it once, I said, when do the proponents get to speak? Because the meeting was just like this. There was no person supporting it. And so they were just listening to about 200 people get up and rail on each and every one of these edicts from ABAG. And at the end, all the staff stands up and high-fives each other. Well, we survived that. Those yahoos are gone now. And we'll go on with our business. Because we have our plan. We designed it for ABAG, and we're gonna enforce it on Danville, and we'll move on to the next town. And you know what? They pay us almost $500,000 to do this. Hey, whoa, they're really happy. They didn't bother them that everyone got up and said, I don't believe we're going to get out of our automobiles. What is this on page 4 that we're all going to get out of our automobiles? What does this mean when you build low-income housing and put up half as many parking spots as you need, impacting or surrounding neighborhoods and businesses? What does that mean to us? It's not economically viable. Well, these people aren't going to have cars. Well, how many poor people do you know that don't have a job that requires a car? They're not working on Montgomery Street. They're not selling derivatives. And they have a hammer and a shovel, and they got to be somewhere. So of course they're going to have automobiles. But we're living in this fiction that was created by ABAG and by Agenda 21 and all of these other people. And that's what, when you receive this outline, number 3 says, get all the stupid political language out of our planning document. You know why? Not just because it's stupid, but it's because they can come in later and sue us because we didn't do it. Why are you guys still in your car? How'd you get here tonight? How many rode transit? What the hell? Don't you care about your community? You should have been thumbing a ride over here. I'll bet a lot of you had cars. Oh, man. Okay. The ABAG PDA, once you have a priority development agreement, they can enforce more and more on you. They put you on the wheel, now they'll turn the spit. So the reason we're against PDAs is not because we're not against planning or because we want people to have a rational plan for low-income senior housing. It's because we have opened ourselves up then to future requirements. So we've got to get rid of the PDA, and the council, and my son had a nice long conversation today with Karen Stepper, they know they don't have to have the PDA. No, and they also know they don't need the language because, as Mike correctly pointed out, it hasn't been passed by anyone. Heather said the same thing. So why are we putting language in there to bind our hands when they haven't even passed it themselves? And like most of these bureaucrats, they're living in the hills, but they want you to live in the stack and pack in the city. And many of these have been built, and especially in Marin County, in Mill Valley, they've been built and not occupied because people, do you know that? People don't want to live there without an automobile. I don't know what's wrong with them. Challenge the RENA numbers, and Heather nailed this. RENA says we're going to grow at 10%. We grew at 200 people over the last several years. 200 in Danville. So how do we get a 10% increase in our allocation for low-income housing? Because they want us to have that. Department of Finance says the Bay Area is going to grow at 5%. We grew at 200. So we can live with a 5%, and that cuts our allocation in half. Why do we want to do that? Because we're stingy, or because we don't want them to come here, or any of the other crazy reasons they give for our opposing it? No, we don't want to be required to do something that Danville would never have done on its own. And that it has no place here. And every time they try and do it, the Danville Hotel, great opportunity. Let's put 6 stories there. Not enough parking. Well, let's put it there. So they suggested the developer, and what did the developer say? Hell no. That's not going to fly. Nobody's going to live up there. They're crazy. And where are you going to put their car? And what's that going to do? How's that going to impact the business, which is the business community down there? Well, it's going to ruin them. So we want to change the RENA allocation because it is overly aggressive, and they want us to be tied to these unsustainable numbers. All of the whenever you hear sustainability, whenever you hear these buzzwords, start worrying because it's not sustainable. And as I mentioned to the Planning Commission, the only thing that's really not sustainable is the tax dollars that are required to support this. Last thing I'm going to say is the low-cost housing is not low cost. You don't build low-cost housing in Danville on $1 million an acre property. It doesn't work. Even if it were $500,000. And on Del Amigo, where I live, they bought a home for about $890,000. The lady had lived there 30 years. She was a chain smoker, and she died, surprisingly. And that house couldn't be renovated. They came with a bulldozer. They had and started their building with an $890,000 empty lot, which they probably paid $100,000 to tear down. So then they had $1 million in it, and they started building a house. And they've got a beautiful, big, huge house. So they're probably in there $2 million. Well, we don't call it low-cost housing in Del Amiga, in the neighborhood. But that's what they want you to do. And it doesn't work. It doesn't pencil out. The land price has to be subsidized. The loan that you put on there, the interest rate has to be subsidized, because a normal interest rate would bankrupt people. The building, that high-density building, the builder has to be subsidized. And then the person's going to pay this $1 million fee to get in there? No, they're poor. Remember, the original objective was to put poor people here. So we have to subsidize their existence, so we pay for it, like Section 8, and you know what happened to that in Antioch. So we want the language out, we want the PDAs out, and we want a reasonable RENA for real reasons. Because otherwise we are obligated into the future to build thousands of these units, and there's just nowhere they fit. So please get involved, get your neighbors, and find the neighbors that know a council member. And then come to Heather and get schooled, or Mike ARATA, one of the folks that understands this issue, and then say, I want to learn about this because I want to go talk to them. Ask them where this belongs. Ask them where they live. And how come they're not near this wonderland? And then try and put pressure on them. We don't need these RENA numbers. We don't need a PDA. We don't need all of these buzzwords and languages that tie our hands. We've got to get involved. If we want to broaden the base, and if we want people, we've got a great spectrum. There's a book running around by, is it Bob Silvestri? Bob Silvestri from Mill Valley. Now, he's as left as I am right. He believes in 90% income tax. I don't know how he's going to live. But he is an architect. And he in Mill Valley ran into this problem with having stack and pack, and he says, this doesn't work. And he begins to attack it from the left. Where is the worst place for the environment, and if you measure carbon, and if you measure all the effects of the environment, where's the worst place to live? New York City, all of the areas that are jammed together. Where's the best place? The single-family home in Danville. Why? We have trees, we have grass, and we don't use that much. Even if you're driving one car full-time, all the time, it doesn't work. So he goes and says, those numbers are better in less dense areas, not more dense. What you're doing is against your basic codicil, which is we're going to improve the environment. You're not. And then he goes through the economics of it, and sure enough, it doesn't work economically either. And he attacks it from all kinds of ways. He has printed a book, and we've ordered 25 of them. We're going to have them at the next meeting. Everyone should read that book. It is an outline of what's wrong with this nonsense. From the left, from an environmentalist, an architect, and a liberal. And I'll give you the same arguments from the right. Economically, it doesn't make sense. You should have the right of freedom of choice as to where you live. You did not move to Danville because it's Fremont. You probably didn't move there because it's Dublin. How many have gone out 680 and looked on the left of Dublin? Huh? Have you seen those? That's why you moved to Danville. That's your dream. You want Danville to look just like that. Well, the creators of these plans wanted every community to look like that. You should all have your fair share of fill in the blanks. And we don't need all that. And it doesn't work economically. So please get involved. Get your neighbors involved. I want to see every one of you at the next Planning Commission meeting. Even if you don't have a firm opinion on this, come and watch the people. Watch the Planning Commission. They have 3 new commissioners that were appointed right in the middle of this war. And they're kind of, they're like deer in the headlights. One guy had the nerve to try and ask a question. They shut him up quickly because they haven't commented. You can get up and say, you people are a bunch of thugs and thieves. They'll nod knowingly. And then the next one will get up and say, you're wonderful people. They'll nod knowingly. They're not commenting. We might as well be there talking to ourselves. But we want to pack it out. We're going to have questions at the end, so I'm not allowed to answer questions. You want to say something really important? We are winding down. I want everyone to be there on the 22nd. It's 7:30. Usually held in the community center on Front Street next to the library. You'll probably have to park out on the street. Be sure and be there. Invite your neighbors. Get more people involved. This guy in Mill Valley that beat his plan had 1/4 of the town at the meetings. 1,000 out of 4,000 people in Mill Valley showed up. What's the hubbub? You know, they didn't know. They couldn't spell Rena. Neither can I. But they got there and they learned and they said, that's not for us. And we can do the same thing. But we will have specifics in the end. They want to know what language we want to take out. And so we're going to go through item number 3 line by line. The plan is, by the way, 1,500 pages? How many?
1,700 pages.
1,700. This is the Health Care Act of Danville. Okay? So we have to go through that. We're going to need, when we ask you to be a volunteer, we may call you to take a few pages and go through there and pull out all of the political statements that will tie our hands in future planning. So please join us. This isn't something you watch. It's not a spectator sport. This is your town, and you're watching a tremendous transformation. Just as 2004, you watch the people get involved saying, we want a voice in planning. And then you see the shuffle and the dance in order to prevent you from having a voice. Now you're being asked to commit yourself to 2030 with 1,000 units of low-income housing. If that's what you want, go home and say, great, we're going to live in Dublin. Otherwise, get involved with us. Heather can't do it all alone. Mike ARATA can't do it all alone. I can't do it all alone. But with you guys being fully engaged, we will not only enjoy this war, we're going to win this war.
We have questions out here. Best laid plans. Best laid plans. And in the handout that I gave you guys, there's Plan Bay Area myth. I mean, there's articles from the left side and the right side. I mean, this is an issue that is across party boundaries. This doesn't have anything to do, I mean, both sides, everybody's mad. Nobody wants to be told how to live, where to live, and how their community should grow. And nobody should be told by an unelected board or body. We should have choice. That's what this is all about.
So when I was at the December meeting, a gentleman came from Alamo and he said, one of the things I like about living in Alamo is having Danville as a neighbor. So towards that point, how has Alamo been able to avoid this whole scenario, and how have other local towns been able to?
Okay, that's a very good question. The question was, how is Alamo able to avoid this, like where Danville has a target? We are incorporated, okay? And Alamo is not. Alamo falls under the county designation. So the county gets an arena allocation and can kind of basically play around with a whole lot of land because they have a large portion. You want to say something, Mike?
I was the chairman of the planning commission in the county when we were doing exactly this. And the county has enough ability to number one, fight the allocation, lower the allocation, and essentially zone mudflats to meet the need. Danville doesn't have that ability. That's why Alamo can offset into Bay Point and other places. But Danville doesn't have that ability. That's why this is so important.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Every mention you made of the town council members, you've said that they're hell-bent on doing this. Is anyone there listening to you? They're supportive of this?
Well, I think they're listening now. I mean, when 350 people show up at a planning commission meeting and all the town council is, hovering in the back and, whatever, listening to this entire thing, they're not immune to the fact that, there's a lot of angst growing and that we are ramping up for a fight on this. They're listening. I think they're trying to step back and see what's going to happen, and so they know that this isn't going away. They're Arnerich, Doyle are they're well and are definitely on board with this. Steppers helped write part of this plan. I don't think a lot of these a lot of them even realize what the overall plan is that I laid out to you. You know, maybe they do. Maybe I'm just, you know, hoping that they don't. But the thing is, we need the people of Danville to tell them we don't want the money, and we need to stop, and they need to stop what they're doing. And the thing is, we need to stop the general plan before the regional plan is baked in our cake. And the biggest argument there is the regional plan doesn't even exist. It's never existed. It's the first ever. It's been untested, and it's not finished. And they're being completely irresponsible by including language, locking us in with stuff that doesn't exist.
But even if it were finished, we wouldn't want that in the plan.
Absolutely not. No, you're right. But
I don't want to use that as the argument.
okay, well that's fine too. We don't want a regional body telling us what to do, but the problem, and they don't have to. I mean, the thing is, SB 375 is not mandatory. In fact, it says in SB 375 that your general plan, local general plan, does not have to be consistent with the regional plan. It says it right in there. It says they cannot force us to do this. The only thing in SB 375 that we have to statutorily do is the RENA allocation. We have to accept a RENA allocation. And that was typically done through HCD, the Housing and Community Development body, okay? Now they've basically injected that into SB 375 and rolled it into the responsibility of ABAG to dole out those allocations. The whole point is they're trying to make it really, really hard for cities to wiggle out of this stuff. So they're you know, that's how they lock you in. So the only thing we have to comply with is the RENA allocation. That doesn't mean that we can't get out of ABAG and deal with the allocation, challenge it, and whatever with HCD, which we've always done without ABAG. But when you listen to Calabrigo's like, well, we need ABAG. If we don't have them, we're like lost puppies and we'll be whipped. And we won't have they're helping us. No, they're not. Trust me, these ABAG people and MTC people are not helping us. They are there to make sure that we go along with the program or we don't get our money. And if we say no and we fight back like Corte Madera did, we will have our allocations reduced to almost nothing instantaneously. And all we have to do is stop paying ABAG dues because ABAG is voluntary. It's a made-up organization, and we can stop paying dues tomorrow, and they will not have they will essentially fall apart. So that's what we need to do. We can, you know, Calabrigo is the second highest paid city manager in California for a town of this size, making over $330,000. So between him and the planners, if they're not going to do their job and they're going to let the regional bodies do it, then we don't need them anymore, and we can save our PDA money and RENA allocation money and whatever else just by firing all of them. I'm just kidding.
What are the dues that we pay? What are the fees that you pay?
We pay about $8,000 to a year, I think. It's based on the dues that you pay to ABAG are based on the size of the town. And I believe the number that I saw was around $8,000 for our dues. And I think Mike ARATA showed you that there's like 88 people and I think $11 million in salaries for these planners. This is what they do.
Heather, they get approximately $11 million from the feds and $4 million from the state, and they contract out for various services, and people contract with them, and there's another $1 million that they gain from those transactions. So that's the bulk of their income. The dues is a small portion, but ABAG is the Association of Bay Area Governments, and without members, they cease to exist.
Right.
And so as Heather says, we can start the ball rolling or keep it rolling, the ball that Corte Madera started.
See, the thing is that Karen Stepper and these people, and I don't know, maybe they realize it, and I don't know. But what's happening is we've lost local control. Okay, we no longer have local decisions being made, local money. We're every time our city needs money, we got to go now ask the county. We got to go ask this regional body. We got to go beg the state, and everything is strings attached. So, you know, the more they feed into this whole process, you know, and I realize, you know, they want a seat at the table, but, you know, should the table even be there? I mean, their argument is if we don't have a seat at the table, we're the meal. We're the meal anyway. The table shouldn't exist. There's no such thing as a regional agency. Get rid of the regional body. Chop its head off. Get the rest of the cities in the Bay Area, I'm telling you, are fighting this, okay? I'm in touch with groups all over the Bay Area that are doing exactly what we're doing, educating people. The cities are even fighting back. The councils are fighting back with these RENA allocations, but they don't have the people rising up. And what we need, because we aren't meant to know what's happening. This group, ABAG and MTC, have been pushing this plan fast. Really fast. Why? Because they don't want what's happening now to happen. Okay, they need to get this plan done. It was supposed to be rubber stamped in April, but because we've basically organized large opposition to them over their last workshop cycle, they've eventually imposed all kinds of roadblocks. They've moved it back to June. So we have a couple more months. But I'm telling you, unless the people start saying no and we need to get this in the media. We need to make it so Danville, the rest of the Bay Area is saying what's going on in Danville. And why aren't you getting us out of it like Danville's fighting in? And then we can expose what's happening at this ABAG and MTC level, at the regional level, and then we'll have a chance. Yes, ma'am.
So when we go to the meeting next week, so what should we do? What should we say? So
you can take those items and you can read right off of it. You can say whatever you want. You walk into the meeting, you get a speaker card, you put your name on the card. You don't even have to tell them your real name. You don't have to tell them where you live. If you don't live in Danville, it doesn't matter. They're not allowed to ask you. That's part of the Brown Act. They'll ask you where you live because they want to know whether they can ignore you or not. Okay? I mean, that's really what it's about. You go in, they've got yellow cards. They're speaker cards, comment cards, okay? You pick up a yellow card. I will be at the meeting. MARYANN will be at the meeting. If you don't know what to do, we can help you. If you don't want to speak, that's okay too, although not to speak is generally, you know, they need to hear from you. If you're going to be there and spend the time, I would say stand up and say, I strongly oppose this plan, and I want you to get out of ABAG. That's it. Walk. That's all you need to say, okay? Whatever.
If you don't want to speak, you can. I mean, if you're completely opposed to speaking, you just don't want to get up in front of a crowd, you can take the yellow card and mark your objection in writing. Those cards are read.
Yeah, but they don't count. They don't count as much. They don't really count them as much. But they do count them. But you know, hold a sign. I mean, bring a 8x11 yellow sign that says, you know, get out of ABAG, and just hold that up when the rest of people are speaking. What we want to do is we want a sea of opposition. We want them to be looking out there going, oh my God, you know, they're all against it. We want them to. This is how the other side does it. Okay, they show up, and even though the people that speak, and the ones that don't stand up and hold signs right behind them so that the council or the ABAG people or whatever get the message. That's how we need to be. Our message needs to be in their face, and we don't have a lot of time.
It seems like the meeting we really need to focus on, though, besides next week, is the one after that where the elected officials are going to be facing it. I mean, is there a plan to get some leaflets out?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if we had a lot of people there, these people, they're elected officials, they can be recalled.
And that's exactly right. I mean, this is the first step. I mean, you know, we've passed out, hand-delivered 4,000 flyers to get you guys here, okay? And now we're hoping that you guys can pay, you know, help pay that forward, right? By getting on our list and engaging. We don't have a lot of time. You're absolutely right. What we want to be doing is we're going to be getting door knockers. We need, you know, not a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of money to get this message out. You know, 5 of us handed out 4,000 flyers. 5. In about a week and a half. That was a couple hours a day, you know, rather than getting on the treadmill, go walk your neighborhood. But it's worth it. You know, this is how people get, you know, and it worked. So this is what we want to do, and then we want to send them to the Citizens Town Hall website so that they know what to do or how to get involved. But we want to pack those meetings.
Just a couple things. All the town council members have been at these planning commission hearings. They're sitting in the audience. So if you go next week, it's not just planning commission you're going to see and hear you. It's the town council. That's
right, and they're gauging. Look, they're trying to figure out whether this is a contained brush fire. Okay, they are. They're trying to figure out whether they should care enough to do something about it. And what we want to do is say, no. It's not the same 350 people you saw last week. It's now another new 350 people plus. And that's the thing, because, they basically need to know, they're doing the numbers in their head right now. Let's see, there's 42,000 people in Danville and 1,000 people, they're trying to figure out whether they're going to get elected. That's really the math they're doing in their head, and we want to go, no, you're not.
One other point about the comment cards, what we did at SOS Danville is I typed up something that people could then staple to their comment card and turn it in.
Yeah.
So that was easy, although I will note that the Planning Commission member that was handling the cards ripped the comments off before he read them into the record. So I'm planning on sending over an email asking for a copy of all the comment cards.
Right.
I want to look and see
And then
what he did with those.
They lost my comment card. And anyway, they play games like that. But, written comments are good if you want to take the time to write something and put your name. Then you do need to put your name and your address, because if you want it into the record, then you just submit it and say, I'd like this entered into the record, and you don't necessarily have to speak, but it gets on record. I mean, we want as many comments. And feel free to call the Danville Town Council. Start getting your friends to call. If we get 100 people calling a day saying, I want to get out of ABAG, I heard about this ABAG thing, I want you out of it. And we get people emailing them the same thing. I mean, we got to hit them from all directions.
I think, though, that we shouldn't underestimate how arrogant, stand up, Pete. We can't underestimate just how arrogant the staff and the council are. Absolutely. And if you guys had been at the planning commission, last three planning commissions, the Save Open Space people have gotten up, and MARYANN and their attorney and a couple of other people, and they've just walked through very carefully how they ignored the city council and the staff, have completely ignored the law. Don't care about the law. That was passed by 75% of the people of the city of Danville. So do you think they're going to listen to 300 people who come to a meeting if they're going to totally ignore a law, a binding law?
Well, that's why we're going to, try to get, we're going to take it to the net. We're going to take it as far as we need to take it. We just need people to help us do that. Okay. So if you guys are with us, we appreciate it. Thank you for coming. I'm open to more questions. One more.
Yeah. The part of the theater is that this is a process of inclusion. So part of the law requires workshops. So unless they can call these raucous town hall meetings we've been having workshops, they're going to have to go into a series of workshops. Transportation, housing, all of the environment, all these various areas should be covered in workshops. We're going to need you to overflow those workshops. You will suddenly have a burning desire to express yourself on transportation.
Well, and the other thing is, look, I've been through enough of these workshops too, and we need to get our people trained, because these are Delphi meetings. These are rigged meetings where they bring out their NGOs and stakeholders and the social justice crowd and all these paid. I'm telling you, they will all pack the meetings, and they will tell you to shut up, sit down. I'm not kidding. They will ridicule you. They will pretend they live in your community. They will vote. And you got to know how to deal with this, okay? These are rigged, fake meetings designed to come to the outcome they want, which is what the plan is. That's the plan. They've been working on it for 20 years. They were all part of the beginning in the genesis of it. You're just figuring it out, and trust me, they don't want you to stop the plan, okay?
You will have an impact on those workshops, and if we fail there, fail at the Planning Commission, and fail at the City Council, we have to get a large number of signatures in 30 days, and let me assure you, we can do it. But not me, not Heather, not Mike, not Pete. It's us all together.
And once you know.
Mary, what a great tool
Yeah.
to learn how to pass a petition.
Well, once you know what to expect, once you know what the plan is, now you know the truth, now you know the plan, now you know what they're doing, we prepare for the meetings and all of these things, it's very easy to shut them down, okay? Because there's really only about 50 or so of these people that show up to the same meetings. And once you start going to the workshops and the meetings, they realize that you know who they are and they can't pretend anymore. I mean, that's how fake this is. So anyway, thank you for coming. One more, that's it.
I know, two more things. Number one, the sustainability plan is on the town website. It's easy to find that site. Just Google Town of Danville, California. And on that site, look to the Planning Commission. You can find the entire 300-page sustainability plan. Number two, the important parts of that plan are part of the handouts that are on a front table that a lot of people tend to walk by at that meeting. Pick up those printed materials that the town is providing, and you have a lot of the ammunition in front of you. Pay particular attention to the so-called opportunity sites, or the development areas. And there are 14 of them, and you'll want in particular to see how close you may live to one of them, because that's the neighborhoods we're going to want to concentrate on for particular action. And finally, they will call, if they act like they did last time around, the first speakers who will be called from those yellow submission cards will be those who have not spoken before. I had spoken before, so I thought it was just going to be shut out. And
They can't stop you from speaking.
right,
Yeah.
but understand that the first people they will call, and so you need to be patient if you've spoken before, they will call first the people they do not remember having spoken before. So any of you who are inclined, once you've learned a few of the issues, you've heard a bunch of them tonight, we hope that you will stand up in that early bunch and say something in opposition. People have spoken from the heart, and that's extraordinarily effective.
Quick question, how many of the sites that have been designated as primary or priority development areas are owned by a single owner? In other words,
I don't know that. Heather?
because that maybe was partly driving.
I don't think that that's the case. As a, for instance, one that impacts my neighborhood is that Darby Plaza that sits between El Cerro, El Pintado, and the freeway. Down the corner over there, that low-lying office building that sits back. That is 7+ acres right there. And so that's become one of the primary targets. And there's a lot of residential space around that. I think that's owned by Darby somebody. And so I think the ownership varies. Another one that I know off the top of my head is the Borrell property along 680 that wasn't Orchard. And I think that's got numerous acres, so they're looking at that one. So I don't have all 14 in my head, but they are part of the plan. I think there's a variance of the
I have to return this room to the exact pristine condition it was in. So if you guys could just help stack chairs and push them that way, that would really be helpful.